Okay, this movie I'm reviewing, it's a difficult movie for me to review because my opinion of it, honestly, is all over the place. It depends on which day of the week it is and how I feel about it. And what movie am I talking about? Well, that would be The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey from 2012. And as you'll see, this is the extended edition that I own. First of all, I'm going to get this right out of the way. My wife hates this movie. She's pretty much a Tolkien purist. She did love the Lord of the Rings movies, however, and she has coined the term the Hobbit syndrome, which is basically a movie that you really look forward to but is disappointing. But like I said, my opinion of it is all over the place. So instead of doing just a straight up review of the movie, I'm just going to list the things that I liked about the movie and what I didn't like. But first, I'll just give a general synopsis. I mean, if you've read The Hobbit, like most people have, you know what it's about. But for those of you who haven't, it's about the Hobbit named Bilbo Baggins and his quest with 13 dwarves and the wizard Gandalf to retake Erebor, which is the dwarves' homeland that has been taken by Smaug the dragon. And that's about the meat and potatoes of it, the quickest synopsis I could do for that. But anyway, I'm going to start with what I didn't like about the movie, get the negativity all out of the air and everything, and then I'll go with what I liked about the movie. Okay, first thing I didn't like about this movie was the pacing. My God, the pacing in this movie is terrible compared to the original Lord of the Rings trilogy especially, but just in general, it is not very good. You got a 10-minute prologue, which could have been condensed into like a 2-minute prologue. And then when you get to the action scenes, they don't build tension with them. They're just there to look pretty and look cool. It's like, uh-oh, here's a problem, here's a solution, let's execute. And then it's done. No tension to build up or anything like that. Another thing I didn't like about this movie was just trying to reference and connect it with the Lord of the Rings trilogy too much. Just trying to make subtle references just for the sake of saying, hey, the Lord of the Rings exists and we're part of that universe, so hey, let's connect it. Like, the side story with the necromancer was unnecessary, because, and this is part of a bigger problem with the whole trilogy. It should have been, at the very least, 2 movies. And the whole necromancer plot was put in there just to pad it out, make it 3 movies. But yeah, it should have just been 2 movies. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. And I've seen the other 2 movies, so I'll review those at a later date. But this one it just, like I said, it goes back to the pacing of the movie. It ruins the pacing. I mean, the book is 400 pages long. It does not need to be 3 movies. And like I said, the whole White Council meeting and everything was unnecessary to try to connect everything together to Lord of the Rings. And the third thing I did not like was the excessive use of CG when you didn't need to use it. What am I talking about? Well, in the original Lord of the Rings, you had such great orc costumes, and orc suits and masks. They looked so real, and like you had Gothmog in Return of the King with like he kind of had the Elephant Man syndrome like that. The Uruk-hai looked great and imposing, and those were people in suits for the most part, except for some of the wide shots, obviously, which were CG. But my problem is every orc in this movie is CG, and it just looks like a video game. I know it's probably been said 1,000 times, but it looks like a video game. And the main orc, Azog, it was just kind of, I think, just put in there just to have a physical antagonist when you really didn't need one. And I think it goes back to the 3-movie structure, because you weren't going to see really Smaug in this movie, which I think he would have been if it had been An Unexpected Journey, and then the second movie was going to be There and Back Again. But since he's now been moved to the second movie, they created Azog to be kind of an antagonist for this movie. I mean, yeah, there are other bad guys like the Goblin King and stuff. By the way, that whole sequence I didn't think was done very well either, and that goes back to the pacing with the action too. And it kind of reeked, I hate to say this, of like kind of George Lucas juvenile humor like they had with Jar Jar Binks and stuff. It was kind of unnecessary. And and then the final thing I didn't like about the movie, like I said, is just it seemed like they were trying to sell you the extended cut in the theaters. It should have, yeah, a lot of those scenes could have been cut, and they could have been part of the extended edition. Like the whole White Council thing could have definitely been cut, at least cut down. But instead, with the extended edition, you even get more added dialogue, and you get more added action scenes. Like the fight between the big rocks, I think, could have been part of the extended edition. It didn't need to be part of the main movie. It didn't add anything really to it. So those are my negatives on the movie, and I think a lot of people will agree on the negatives. So what did I like about this movie? Well, I really liked the principal cast of the movie. I don't think you could have gotten a better Bilbo than Martin Freeman. I mean, he looks like a young Ian Holm. He has the same mannerisms. It's pretty seamless, you know, how he can portray Bilbo just like Ian Holm did, except a younger version. Richard Armitage as Thorin Oakenshield, I thought, was also a great casting choice. He's just this really great, stoic, serious dwarf who wants to reclaim his homeland and do right by his people. I thought he did a good job in this movie. And also, of course, the great Ian McKellen as Gandalf. I don't even need to say anything about that. Just Ian McKellen as Gandalf. Awesome. And Gandalf the Grey, who's, I think, is a lot more fun than Gandalf the White, personally. But another thing I liked about this movie was when they did the cinematography on like real sets and not real sets, but like real locations, it still looked great. It still looked like Lord of the Rings and everything. And yeah, just use more locations, and that'll improve the movie. Yeah, no, that's not the only thing that needs to be done. And of course, I like the soundtrack, which harkens back to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack by Howard Shore. All the new tracks I think are great, especially the song. I like the song in the Lonely Mountain. I like the theme of Thorin and the Dwarves, especially when it's in an action scene. It's very uplifting and epic. It's a lot of fun. Was there anything else I liked about this? Oh, the relationship between Thorin and Bilbo was, I thought, done really well, at least in this movie. They kind of get away from that a little bit in the second movie, but where it starts out, Thorin doesn't think he's worthy to be in the company, and then Bilbo proves himself. I thought that was a great arc. Speaking of which, I forgot one thing that I really like here. I don't want to forget. Riddles in the Dark with Gollum and Bilbo. That's the best part of the movie, in my opinion. I mean, you have Andy Serkis once again doing his great job as Gollum, and I think anything Andy Serkis touches turns to gold, pretty much, even if it's kind of a stinker, you know. I think he's been great in the new Star Wars movie, by the way. But yeah, just that scene, that's like the one point in this movie that has great tension between the two. It's like, is Bilbo going to get out of this? I mean, granted, we all know he's going to, but just the way they set it up and the way that the actors portray their characters, I think, creates that great tension. And I love the part where the part where you see Bilbo spare Gollum, I think, is great too. It's like, it creates that character arc for Gollum and eventually Frodo too. And like I said, that was probably the best part of the movie. So overall, what did I think of the movie? I was psyched when I heard they were going to do The Hobbit, and I'll admit I was excited when they were going to do 3 movies initially, but because I thought it was going to be Lord of the Rings all over again, like good times at the theater 3 years in a row, yay. But after seeing this, I did walk out fairly disappointed in the movie as a whole. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, obviously, but unlike my wife, who I think she thinks it's probably one of the worst, but my opinion is that it was serviceable, I guess, but it could have been a lot better. I give this movie probably a 3, instead of a 3.5, I'd probably down it to about a 3 out of 5. It's worth watching once. That's about all I can say about it. I mean, like I said, the acting is good, but the pacing, it kind of reminds me almost of, I'm geeking myself out doing this reference, but this Star Trek The Motion Picture kind of pacing, kind of slow and plodding, but then when you get to the action scenes, it just goes way too fast. It's like ADHD kind of like. So eventually I'm going to review the second movie, which I did like a lot better than the first one, The Desolation of Smaug. So be on the lookout for that one, and hopefully I'll see you again soon with another movie review. This is NWO Reverend signing out.